What is up, New Beginnings Church? Happy Wednesday morning to you, and welcome to this devotional series. I got another week with my friend Shane Willard, and I'm telling you, nothing is more interesting to a lot of Christians. If you've been a Christian for a long time, you've heard the book of Revelation, and it can be so fascinating, intriguing, scary even at times.
Yeah.
So it's so fun to hear you talk about it. It's been so good so far. But the first part of that book is addressing 7 specific churches. Yesterday you were talking about how, a lot of the things that are talked about in the book of Revelation were historical things happening at that moment. What was the point of John addressing the 7 churches the way that he did? What are some of the thoughts behind that? Like, you think about Philadelphia, you think about Sardis, Ephesus. You mentioned Ephesus yesterday. Unpack the why behind addressing these churches, and then of course maybe some insight into one of these churches.
Well, remember, the church was fledgling back then. There was no public meetings of the church. Churches met in private spaces, and they had to regularly, the leaders of the church, Roman tolerance for religion was epic. Like, you could worship whatever you wanted as long as Caesar was Lord.
Right.
And that created a bit of a problem. And people standing against a 9-layered class system that drove the economy was a bit of a problem.
Okay, you got to pause there. You just said something, a 9-layer class system. What does that mean?
So it means that in the Roman Empire, people were divided into 9 layers of classes, like caste systems. So 1 to 9, 1 being
Was this mostly economically driven by class?
Economics and social. And if you were a first-class citizen in the capital city, you were guaranteed a living wage based on the excessive taxation of everybody else. And that living wage was called the dole. So the dole was, you get a guaranteed living wage because we're going to tax everybody else. But here was the thing. You had to proclaim Caesar's Lord. So when Paul says, if you confess with your mouth and believe with your heart Jesus is Lord, you'll be saved. What book's that in? Romans. Does he write that anywhere else? No. Why? Didn't apply, right? To dumb that down into the one formula to go to heaven is sort of missing the bigger point. He's writing to people in the capital city who are guaranteed a living wage called the dole based on the excessive taxation of everybody else. And he's like, hey man, if you say this out loud, God is faithful to save you. You'll lose your living wage, but there's another way. You don't have to live with the tyranny of this thing, right? So there's all of these sort of nuances around this stuff. And so first, he was commending them, because people need encouraging living in that situation. Second, he was correcting them. And then he was also offering reconciliation. The correction wasn't condemning. It was, there's a better way. Even Laodicea, which he says nothing good about. Basically, he says, when I look at how you think about your things, it makes me sort of sick, right? But then the very next verse is, but I'll stand at the door and knock. If you want to eat, let's make this right? So you have places like Laodicea and Sardis, where Sardis was a impenetrable city up on this big rock face that they had put a 40 foot high wall around the top of the rock face. And the guy that did that was a guy named Croesus, and he said, look, we can never be attacked up here. And the truth is they never were attacked, but they kept getting robbed because they got complacent. There was this secret tunnel that went from the middle of the city down to the valley below for the military. And this guy fell asleep on the wall and lost his helmet. So he went down to find it, and he revealed unknowingly the entrance to this secret tunnel to these Persian spies. And so in the middle of the night, when everybody was asleep, they came up and robbed the place right in the middle of the night. Didn't attack it, robbed it. And that was in 336 BC. And then that kept happening every 50, 60 years. When people kept forgetting, when people forgot and got complacent, they kept getting robbed. So Jesus says to them, hey, wake up. Your deeds are not yet finished. If I come to you like a thief in the night.
Like a thief in the night.
Like a thief in the night. This was not about rapture. This was about an illustration from their past. Every time you get complacent, people steal your things. It's time for you to wake up. And so you see, when you look at these histories, it's amazing. So I decided to do a whole series on the letters to 7 churches where I went through the history of all those places and then talked through the implications of it for our right now.
So for Sardis, it was, hey, you know how you keep getting robbed in the middle of the night?
Yeah.
Because you keep falling asleep?
Yeah,
Because you get complacent?
Yes.
That's what it's like. And so what a profound way to think about that when you do understand the history of these cities,
Right.
these,
They kept being
these
robbed.
places.
Yeah, he doesn't use the thief in the night metaphor for any other place.
That's right.
It wouldn't have fit.
So what is the practical, let's wrap on this idea for now. What would be the practical application of don't get complacent, don't sleep?
Well, I don't think there's any more affluent and secure place than America.
Right.
Like, if there's ever a place in the history of the world that could do two things: one, get complacent, or two, lose perspective and think America's awful. I hear Americans complain about America. I'm like, man, did you wake up today in Burma? You didn't.
No.
Sudan? You didn't. And so that perspective, but really, when I hear complaining people, particularly Americans complaining, I just know they've lost perspective and they've fallen asleep in their affluence and their security. And that's the exact moment that it's threatened.
So we are, in a way, like the Church of Sardis.
We're exactly like that.
Got it. What a powerful thing to consider, to pray about, to apply to our lives. Don't be complacent. Don't get sleepy. Engage in bringing heaven to earth.
Yeah,
right here,
and
right
notice
there.
his solution. He's like, your deeds are not yet finished. Hallow the name, man.
Yeah.
Get up, use your energy for something other than complaining.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. Church, I hope you're enjoying this. It is amazing. So much fun. God bless you. I will see you tomorrow.